Hey, it's Chris from the Felt Recoil Podcast. Our charity of choice this week is Operation Underground Railroad. Here's a story that will make your stomach hurt. National sex trafficking sting has ended in the arrest of 552 would-be sex buyers or sex traffickers on Super Bowl Sunday. 23 law enforcement agencies in 14 states took part in the crackdown. Listen, 522 Johns and 30 pimps arrested on Super Bowl Sunday. This is in the U.S. This isn't a third world country. This is happening here at home. Operation Underground Railroad is working to put an end to it. If you visit OURrescue.org, you can make a tax-deductible donation and end human trafficking. OUR exists to rescue children from sex trafficking. They would appreciate the help, and we would appreciate it too. A new episode of the Felt Recoil Podcast starts now.
This is Felt Recoil.
Welcome to the Felt Recoil Podcast, episode number 12. That's a dozen. Dose, if you're here legally. P-Mag.
Yes, sir.
To my right, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Good, good, good. My name's Chris, and straight across from me is our friend Harris from H.Goose Watches. How are you, sir?
Doing all right, man.
Thanks for being here. Can't wait to make you terribly uncomfortable. He's going to say, this guy is going to sink my entire company in one fell swoop. We're going to play one question 5 times with Harris. Harris, you make watches.
That's right.
Your company is labeled Out of Traveler's Rest, which your parents still reside. If you don't know, FYI, Traveler's Rest is about 10 minutes from the room we're sitting in right now.
Otherwise known as Tiara.
Tiara, nice. Beautiful little community that has actually exploded in the last 5 years. When I was growing up, my friends lived in TR and you just didn't want to go out there. You'd be like, hey, come to my house. Nah, man, why would I do that? You have an Ingles. Yeah, that's true. I'll come to your house. Okay, cool. Because we had an Ingles plus, one other thing. So typically we start with the one question 5 times, and we're going to do that. But I want to say before we get too deep into it, Patrick, I want you to be prepared once we're done here to tell the story of the adventure of Patrick's lost phone.
Okay.
You ready for that?
Why not?
Because I was pretty excited about it. All right, and that'll be a lot clearer here in just a minute. All right, Harris, let's get to it. 5 questions, one question 5 times. What is the one gun you think everybody should own?
A Glock.
Any particular Glock, or just Glock in general because you love Glock?
Whichever one you like the best. You should shoot a bunch of them, find out what you like, customize a few, take them apart. Try to break them. Yeah. It's hard to do. But
buy all Zeff parts, let it go full auto. I hear you.
Yeah, I've got a few that are my favorites, but they're great guns.
Yeah. Do you have one you keep with you more often than the others?
Yeah, so I recently picked up a G42. It's a 380. I'm partial to the 380 caliber. I've had a SIG P232 forever, one of my favorite guns, and got a good deal on this G42, so I carry that. It's a great gun, but my favorite
fantastic gun.
Yeah, a great little gun. It really sort of fits the bill for a lot of things. But my G20, I have a really custom G20, and it'll knock something down.
It's a man's gun.
That's right. That's right.
Do you want to take a minute and hear about how much Patrick hates SIG? Or do you just want to move on?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I'd love
we
to
don't
hear
have that kind of time.
We should tell you one quick thing to interrupt the questions here, but you do get one I'm over it for the record. I forgot to tell you that up front, but we'll do one question 5 times, but you get one I'm over it. So if anybody in this room, particularly myself, goes on a violent tirade about operating room nurses, which will happen here in just a few minutes, you're allowed to say, hey, Chris, I'm over it, and then we just move on. So if
I'm going to
Patrick,
warn you, I'm saving my I'm over it for the next time someone mentions SIG.
There you go. See?
For the record, the only SIG I've ever owned is the 232. And I've just always really liked that pistol.
Now,
I'll let it slide.
Let's dive just a little bit deeper into your loathe for SIG that you have. Is it only because of the data entry project that's happening in the background right now?
That's a large part of it.
So I'm going to give you...
That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Was it? Okay. this is a little behind the scenes thing, but Patrick and I have a project we've been working on for a while together, a long time. And it will come to fruition within the next little bit. But the point is, it takes a lot of data entry to make this thing happen. Mm-hmm. And SIG was something we were doing data entry. Well, Patrick mainly was doing it. And he just learned to hate SIG because of the various numbers of models they have.
I drew the short straw on that one.
That's pretty funny.
Chris is all, yeah, I'll take Glock.
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then I got SIG.
Basically, we're inputting all of the specs on all the different models of these handguns into a system.
They don't send you that. They can't send you that?
They send it to you, but if you want to use it the way we're using it, we had to manually input it. That's all I'll say.
Interesting.
But so we're building the database, and he took SIG, but I took Glock and Kimber. So I think it was kind of fair because Kimber's not exactly like Kimber doesn't make the best 1911. They make the most.
Was there rust on your keyboard when you were done?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So any sort of Glock that makes you comfortable. Harris, what's the one album everyone should own?
Long answer here.
Okay.
Blessing and a Curse, Drive-By Truckers. Patrick and I have known each other for a long time. We played a little music together when I was in college. Always loved the Drive-By Truckers. This album, I think it's incredible. The band doesn't like it. Critics didn't like it. But for me, it represents a time when that band was coming apart at the seams. And I think my life about that time was sort of coming apart at the seams as well.
Yeah.
So
you kind of related to it.
I did,
right.
Very much.
Yeah. Wait, did you say the band doesn't like it? Like Drive-By Truckers is like, they probably wouldn't buy that album.
Yeah, literally. They've said that. Guy Patterson Hood and Jason Isbell was in the band at the time. Big Jason Isbell fan, always have been. But that was his last album with them, and his last tour with them was shortly after that. And I remember seeing them play, and they wouldn't even look at each other. I mean, it was interesting.
So was it infighting, or was it drug abuse, a mixture of the two?
It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll all the way around.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was all three of those things. The bassist was married to one of the guitar players, and they were falling apart, and everybody was, I think, drinking too much. And I mean, I don't know these guys, but
right, yeah.
But there were definitely some parallels between my life at 21 years old and
their lives at whatever
with that band.
All right, what's the one book you think everyone should read?
Oh, this is a great one. Georgia Scenes by Augustus Baldwin Longstreet. I think it was originally published in 1835. But it sort of set the stage for all Southern literature thereafter, which is a lot to say.
Absolutely a lot to say.
Incredible book.
Okay, what's it about? What's the rundown?
It's just pictures of daily life. I mean, it's sort of
so it's a picture.
Yeah, well, it's
Patrick picked the same, but his was it was called Color the Dots 1.
And now I can count a potato.
No, this one is not going to be that kind of book. This one's hard to read because it's written in 1830s rural Georgia vernacular, but it's a bunch of short stories that are sort of cultural snapshots of life in Georgia in the 1830s.
Ah, interesting.
A.B. Longstreet was the president of the University of South Carolina. I believe at one point he was also the president of the University of Alabama and maybe Georgia as well. He was a Methodist minister.
Busy man.
Fiction writer. So great book. I highly recommend it.
What is the one movie everyone should see?
Another obscure one, Vernon, Florida. It's a documentary, Errol Morris. It's about a town in rural Florida. I think he made it in the early 80s. He went down there to investigate folks that were intentionally cutting off their own limbs to file insurance claims. That's right. You heard it.
File that under only in Florida,
that's
right?
In North Florida. But he got threatened with death and ended up, they said, listen, you make this movie, we won't kill you. So he took all the footage and just did like an expose of the town without focusing on this insurance scam.
It's just random shots of guys walking by with no arms. like what?
Yeah, no, it is. But it is absolutely fascinating.
Sounds like Monty Python.
It's I took a course in college on documentary film and it really got fired up about it. And this one is just always stuck with me, and I have to rewatch it once a year just to keep both feet on the merry-go-round. It's great. So that's probably my favorite movie.
Okay, so all right, clarify this for me. This is basically a documentary. It's called Vernon, Florida.
Yeah, the name of the town.
And it's a documentary about fraudulent dismemberment.
Yeah, or in theory, but that's not what you see. You only know that because Errol Morris told everyone that afterward. So,
right, okay, that was my question. Is how did you know that if it wasn't the focal point?
He's written about it since. I mean, this was 35 years ago, but it's on Netflix. You can watch it. It's about an hour and a half, and watch it alone. You know,
I'm going to have a lot of free time in the next 5 days. I guarantee I will be watching that.
Have you ever seen the documentary My Brother's Keeper? Because that's what you're making me think about here.
that rings a bell. What's that?
It's the like 4 brothers that live in rural New York, I think, and one of them dies.
Yes.
And then it goes to court about whether or not he was murdered. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to dive into how bizarre that documentary is, but this is ringing some bells here, Vernon, Florida.
Same stuff. Similar. Vernon's even more, it's real abstract. I mean, it's non-participatory, meaning the guys that made the movie, you don't see any interaction. It's just these random good old boys. There's one guy who's a turkey hunter, and he just talks for an inordinate amount of time about what it's like to hunt turkeys in the pines in North Florida. And to most people, that sounds boring, but if you've ever been turkey hunting, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I don't know, wonderful movie. I love Errol Morris, but this is when he was in his 20s, and it's just it's good stuff.
Huh.
I can't wait.
It does a great job documenting the town's one-legged mayor and their one-armed barber and the flapjack flipper back there who's missing 3 fingers.
Yeah.
Can we just ask ourselves for a second, like, where do you respond? How much is insurance paying out for losing an arm that you go, you know what?
Must be pretty good.
At this point, just chop it off. I'm not really
Cut it off, Ronnie.
Do anything with that one anyway. Unreal. Okay, now we issued you a challenge on last week's podcast because Tom Weathers was here from Trailblazer Survival School, and he really went deep when we asked him what's the one piece of advice you'd give your 18-year-old self. So we hope you brought your A game here. Yeah,
you know, I didn't have to think about this one. I've been asked this before, and it would far and away be join the military now. Don't wait. I enlisted in the Navy when I was 23. I should have done it when I was 18.
Yeah?
That's it.
Okay, why?
It's the foundation of who I am. You know, it taught me a lot. I grew up a lot. It humbled me. It put me in my place a little bit. And they would have paid for me to go to college, so I could have saved a bunch of money on that.
Yeah? Did they not pay for you to go to college
They
eventually?
paid for me to go to grad school. They're paying for me right now to go to grad school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but no, I paid for myself to go to college, so it...
So did you graduate and then enlist? Is
no,
that what I've gotten wrong? Or?
I failed to graduate,
Okay.
So my GPA wasn't high enough at the University of South Carolina. I had enough credits to graduate. It was right in the middle of the recession. I could have taken another semester, got my GPA up, and then the question, then what, you know?
Yeah.
I'd always wanted to join the military. It wasn't encouraged at my high school. I went to a small private school. My parents weren't in, but all my grandparents, great-grandparents, going way back, were in. It's always something I was interested in, and I loved every minute of it.
Huh. And what branch were you in?
Navy.
Okay. Very cool. We kind of have an opposite perspective on that, but I mean, in the sense of when I was in high school, it was very much like the military.
Yeah.
They were very strict, and it was, I mean, I didn't have a day of my life for the first 20 years that every minute wasn't planned out for me. Yeah. So I had a few friends go into the military, but I remember thinking, I don't want that anymore. Like I've had that. I'm ready to kind of go do which is what took me to Columbia. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing we all 3 in this room have in common is we all spent some time in Columbia. I went down there just kind of like, let me go see what else exists out. And it wasn't like I wasn't being beaten up or anything, but it was just a strict, stringent schedule all day, every day. I mean, I had a job that I got up at 5:30 every Saturday morning and went to work. And I don't think a lot of high school kids do that, but that was me on Saturdays in high school. So I was kind of like, I couldn't figure out why military was the choice some friends were making. Yeah. But in hindsight, I do wish I would have done it, you know, but can't change that. But at the time, that just wasn't my perspective. But I like that. Okay, one piece of advice, humble yourself going to the military.
That's right.
All right, let's run back through it. So any Glock, any caliber, whatever works for you, but just Glock is your preference.
Oh, yeah.
The album is Drive-By Truckers, Blessing and a Curse.
Oh, yeah.
And then Georgia Scenes by Augusta Longstreet.
Augustus Baldwin Longstreet.
Augustus.
A.B. Longstreet. Longstreet Theater down in Columbia is named after him.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. A.B. Longstreet. And then Vernon, Florida is the documentary about dismemberment fraud, which is so weird.
I'm telling you, I can't wait.
Join the military. Yeah. Would you recommend the Navy over other branches?
I don't know. So I pulled up the recruiter here on Pelham Road in Greenville back in 09, and the only available parking spot was in front of the Navy.
So you were just lazy. You were like,
That's why I'm a Navy veteran.
pretty lazy. Let me go in the Navy office here.
Parking.
Can't wait to tell my dad. My dad was in the Navy for 6 years. He was on the Nimitz.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, cool.
Spent a lot of time out there. So he was nuclear guy, whatever he did. I'm not sure. So
Nice.
Dad was super smart growing up.
Yeah.
In fact, let me tell you a funny story. So I think, you have like these stereotypes about how different people end up in different branches of the military.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to blow smoke, but my dad has convinced me that the more intelligent guys tend to go Navy, right? Or Air Force, Navy, Air Force, if you're like a book smart kind of guy. And then your grunts are all, Army, Marine guys that just want to go blow things up.
Can't wait for Zach to smash your face in.
I think Zach would probably agree. Brent would smash my face in.
You're probably right.
But here's the thing. So now I've lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this?
Dad's real
Yeah, your
smart.
dad telling you about the branches and who joins which one.
Yeah, see, you threw me off because now I'm scared that Zach will find me.
Good.
Okay. So here's the thing. So Dad was always book smart and all that. So in my high school, it was a college prep school.
Yeah.
So your senior year was treated like a semester of high school where you chose your classes, you laid out your schedule, you went in and picked, electives and all that, and then you could have free time if you had enough credits to graduate.
Yeah.
So I had taken 2 summer classes in high school, and I was like way ahead of the game is the point. So I went into senior year knowing that I only needed 3 classes each semester to graduate. So Chris was on cruise control. So my dad is like, yep, just make sure, you sign up for physics. That'll be perfect. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't, right? Totally don't. And then we were all at the dinner table one night, and my dad's like, so how's physics going? And I was like, right, yeah, I didn't really sign up for old physics there. And he was so mad, which rightfully so. Like, he just wanted me to push myself a little bit. But man, I was always the kid that was like, what do I need to pass? C? All right, C it is. I'll be in the back room writing song lyrics that'll never be heard by anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's literally what I would do during class. And then as long as I was maintaining my head above the water, that's all I cared about.
Yeah.
Which got me to the point where I'm recording a podcast in my home office. So
Congratulations on that.
I had the recipe for success 23 years ago.
I don't want to talk about how I got to be recording in a podcast in your home office.
Right.
It's a much worse story. It's much sadder.
Let me ask you this. This will be a good transition. So Harris, are you the sole proprietor H.Goose Watches?
Yes, currently I do have a business partner.
Okay.
And Patrick met him the other day. We were in the store, but he's a good guy I work with.
You don't have to say that. You can say whatever you want. It's a podcast.
Yeah, no, but it's
He
just
probably
us
won't
right
hear
now.
it, but he might.
No, he'll definitely hear it. He's excited to listen to this, but it's just us right now. We're growing quickly though. We've got a marketing team that we work with, but they're not in-house.
Gotcha.
It's fun, but it's definitely a lean crew right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
You work hard. Hopefully it takes off, and you look back, and these will be the days that actually you'll probably miss at some
That's
point
right.
because it's all under your control.
Yeah, that's
Everything you say goes at this point.
That's right.
So as a veteran who's come out and you started a small company in your hometown, essentially, because I kind of have this chip on my shoulder right now with Black Rifle Coffee Company. I don't know if you're aware.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're cool.
They're very cool. Sure. I'm really irked by the fact that I feel like they're totally taking advantage of the fact that they served in the military.
Yeah.
In the sense of they're almost shaming people who don't do business with them because they're veterans.
Yeah.
Right? Where do you stand on this issue of, it seems to me I don't find a lot of guys in the middle. Either they totally buy into, you should always support the vets, which we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But the idea of, well, because I'm a vet and I started a business, you should be doing business with me instead of the big conglomerates.
Yeah.
Where does the stance of a company like Black Rifle Coffee Company, who's telling us specifically that we're basically traders if we buy Starbucks at this point, where do you fall, not in that issue specifically, but in, do you find as a veteran starting a business, are you getting support from, both the government and your community the way that you think it should? Is there a hole that isn't being filled that we're unaware of?
I don't know that there's a hole that isn't being filled. In terms of my experience dealing with the Department of Veterans Affairs, I had a very charmed existence in the military. I had a great experience. I loved every minute of the 6 years I spent doing it. Some of the greatest people I know, I had the good fortune to serve with. I've also been very well served by the military. They've paid for me to go back to grad school. They paid me a decent wage while I was in. They took great care of me, filled a few cavities. So I don't have a bad thing to say about the military. Now I will say this: a lot of people end up in the military for a lot of different reasons. And everybody has a different experience, and people come out of the military in different states. And there's folks that come out and they look back and it was a stepping stone and it's foundational and they go on to different things. And there's people that come out with somewhat of a bad attitude. And then there's the people that come out, and they sort of have that chip on their shoulder that like they're owed something. I like to think that I don't really fall into that category. I consider myself a pretty laid back person. I'm fairly apolitical. I have strong feelings about some of the stuff going on in the Middle East just because of my experiences with some of it. But I don't feel like I'm owed anything. I don't feel like any veterans are particularly owed anything. I mean, if you're combat wounded, if you've got something going on that's a direct result of an injury or something that you sustain in the military, we absolutely owe you absolutely everything.
Right.
And that includes me. I owe you. So I think it just varies. In terms of Black Rifle Coffee, I see their stuff on Instagram. I haven't actually ever had any of their coffee. I think they're pretty cool. But I don't believe in really pushing it that like, you should do business with me because I'm a veteran.
Right.
That doesn't do it for me. You should do business with me because I sell a great product.
So are you familiar with their beef with Starbucks right now?
I'm not. I don't think I've read about that.
So Starbucks made an announcement that in their locations in 75 countries around the world, because of the travel ban right now, Starbucks said, well, what we'll do is we will hire 10,000 refugees around the country. So Black Rifle Coffee's CEO says, Starbucks won't hire veterans. I'll hire 10,000 veterans.
I did see that.
Okay.
I did see that.
But Starbucks is already on pace to hire more than 10,000 veterans since they started their hiring veterans program like 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is Starbucks pays the college tuition for their employed veterans, and the veteran gets to choose if their spouse or child also receives college tuition assistance. So here's what brought it back up in my mind. I'm on Instagram today, and Fortis, the company that manufactures AR accessories, I happen to have one of their handguards on one of my ARs, one of my many fine ARs, and they repost a picture of a guy's SBR next to his Starbucks mug with coffee in his own home, and all these just knuckle draggers are on there going, literally, they're using the emoticon of the middle finger to tell Fortis what they think about them reposting a picture of a guy's SBR next to a Starbucks coffee mug. And I thought, when did we become the left? Like, stereotypically, the left is the group that can't stand any opposing points of view. And they're the most misinformed people you usually run into. Like, for instance, today I had lunch at Zoe's Kitchen on Woodruff Road in Greenville.
Great BLT.
They literally have a sign posted that says no open carry weapons allowed. That's already the law.
It's not their decision.
It's already the law. So I thought,
Good thing they put the sign up then.
what we need are signs that say no kidnapping children and no raping people and no robbing the store. Like, let's list every other thing that's already a crime. But so I'm in there, and it occurs to me, people always fear what they don't understand more than they tend to fear anything else, right? Like, I don't like the fact that I'm pretty well convinced that certain doctrines indoctrinate people to do violent things. I think that's the big problem with Islam. is that historically it's a doctrine that is okay with violence. Hence the 3 questions we touched on. You know, Muhammad, like it or not, he was kind of a fighter. He liked to go out and fight people. So if you're going to say he's a perfect guy, then it's okay for you to fight people. But that doesn't mean that every time I meet a Muslim, I'm like, and I put my fists up. You know what I'm saying? It means that it also means an understanding of the fact that most Muslims in the world actually don't follow the fundamentals of their faith. They don't care enough. Like the woman in the hijab who drives herself to a protest and marches down the street. She doesn't follow the tenets of her faith. She's actually, according to her prophet, not even supposed to be out of the house without a male relative escorting her. That's in her holy books. I'm not making that up. That's her deal. So I get it. But as I look at Black Rifle Coffee Company and the way their fans are handling this, I think they're kind of becoming the left. That you're not allowed to have an opposing point of view and say, I'm okay. Starbucks, if you want to hire 10,000 refugees in 75 countries, FYI, that's 133 refugees per country. I think that's like 0.05 refugees per Starbucks store in the U.S. Like, it's not a lot. So I just feel like they're starting to bully people.
But they're coming to your hometown, Vermillion.
They are. Well, we know Syrian refugees are here. They're in Spartanburg County. I haven't seen any working at Starbucks. I haven't seen any working, period. That's kind of my big problem with it is they're going to gain the system. Like, how stupid are we? We're going to pay for these people to live. Anyway, all that to say, it made me wonder because you as a veteran, other people I know as veterans who are out, doing T-shirt companies and doing their own thing, firearms companies and accessory companies, I rarely see them kind of use that crutch of, well, how dare that company not, employ veterans? But it's really ignorant because obviously they are. So anyway, that got me just when Ford has posted that, and again, they were posting someone else's picture of their stuff on a gun happened to be next to a Starbucks coffee mug. You think, when did we're not supposed to be this way? Like, we're all supposed to agree that, hey, you can think a different way, and I'm okay with that, actually. I mean, you can totally disagree, and And
we're talking about coffee. I mean, it's not
right. It's not a big deal. And for the record, so you're a marketing guy, right? By trade. Yeah. I pretend to be, like, I would like to be as good as people like you are. So let me ask you your opinion on this. It occurs to me today, while I'm thinking about it, if Black Rifle Coffee Company plans to open 600 stores nationwide, that's what he's saying, right? We're going to open 600 stores. We're going to only employ 10,000 veterans right off the bat. I don't think more than 3 stores would survive for them, because I'll tell you this: if I saw a BRCC coffee shop, I'm not going to go there with my kids. Because I've seen their Instagram videos. I see what they post online. They're vulgar. They're very profane. They're all about, like, show the girls TNA as often as possible to sell your subpar coffee, which I have purchased before, by the way.
It's not very good.
I didn't think it was great. I bought it because it was supporting a cause I support, which is rescuing enslaved children around the world. Mm-hmm. So, if Black Rifle wants to give money to a worthy cause, they could do that. But my point is, am I wrong in thinking that if your approach so far has been juvenile, vulgar humor, you're probably not going to have a mass appeal in opening 600 stores nationwide? Or maybe that would work, and I just don't know.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for me, there's a restaurant next to y'all's store that Twin Peaks that does kind of the same thing. And I'm sure they'll be successful. In terms of, like, who's going to go where, I think Starbucks is they're sort of part of the sort of fabric of our culture in America. I mean, like the brand, like their policies, dislike them, like whatever. I mean, Starbucks is synonymous with coffee, and that's probably not going anywhere. So, in terms of which store, you go to, and, I don't know. I think it's just different strokes for different folks, but I think it comes back to humility. I mean, it's just, for me, that was a big part of the military. A big benefit I got from being in the military was learning a good bit of humility. And I think you should approach running your business as a veteran that way. Be humble. Don't be in people's face like, oh, you're wearing a Timex, not an H.Goose. You don't support veterans.
Right. Yes, that's perfect. What do we do? Grab the camera.
It's like, no, I just like my Timex, man.
You're gonna be on Fox News tomorrow.
I think you can actually get rid of that marketing team you got. Because you just sold it right there, buddy.
I just make a cooler watch. I'm not going to say I make a better watch than anybody, but I damn sure make a cooler watch.
You make a finer timepiece than anyone else, my friend.
And I'll show it to you, and I think you'll like it. So, it's just humility. I'll try a cup of Black Rifle's coffee, and I'm not a big coffee snob. I like it black and super sludgy.
Yep.
Navy
coffee. We talked about that recently.
Stand the spoon up in it.
Yeah, that's right. I got my Folgers right here, and here it's a little after 10 at night, and I'm still drinking.
Do you wash your coffee mug, or did that stick with you? Because I've heard that's a Navy thing, right? You're not supposed to wash it, and it shows kind of seniority, if you will.
Well, yeah, and that is a Navy thing, but I was joint service. I was on an Army base for a long time. I worked for an agency, a DoD agency for a long time. I wash my coffee mug.
Yeah, I hear you.
Is that more like a ship thing? If you're at sea, you don't wash your mug.
I was never shipboard. So that's definitely, there's some traditions, Navy traditions that I missed out on, and that's one of them. Your dad probably.
Yeah, we actually help me out, guys. What is the aircraft carrier that's ported in Charleston? The USS Yorktown.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We toured the Yorktown with Dad, and it was funny because you kind of had like this pseudo tour guide at the beginning. He's like, "Yeah, well, over here's this, over here's that," and I have video, and you can hear my dad, and he's like, I got this. Don't worry about it.
Filling in the gaps.
Right. And so then when we got to go around alone, Dad was just like, here's this and that, and this is why that was horrible and why this was a terrible idea. The shower is the one thing that stuck with me, because you literally only get like a 3-minute shower.
Yeah.
And you have to turn the water on. Well, so I think you get 3 minutes of running water, because his point was you would turn it on, get wet and cozy, and then turn it off, lather up, and then rinse off. Then that's your shower and you're done.
Got to do it.
Which reminds me of, I wonder, I have to go back and find out if my principal in high school was in the Navy. I thought he was an Army guy. But we had PE first period, and then they required a shower, and they would hold you till like 8:50, and your next class started at 9.
Yeah.
And so you'd try and scoot through a shower. And then, by the way, we had to wear slacks, collared shirt, and a tie all day. You had to get into that dress before you could go to class.
Yeah.
And they expected that to happen in 5 or 6 minutes. And I remember vividly having a conversation with him where I was like, look, man, I'm a fat kid. I'm not getting a shower in like 3 minutes and running off to class. Like, it takes me a minute. And he was like, no. You can do a shower in less than 3 minutes. I don't know why it would take you longer than that. And I was just, what? But looking back on it now, maybe that makes sense. Okay. So anyway, that brought all that back up. But I wanted your perspective on Black Rifle, because they're still irking me so bad.
A lot of great veteran companies out there. I mean, there's a ton of them. Old senior chief of mine called me the other day to talk about a consulting company he's starting down in Florida. A lot of cool under the radar. In fact, there are a lot of veteran companies you probably wouldn't know are veteran owned.
And you know what? That's a great point, Harris, because I've done work recently with a guy who will tell you stories so casually about the things he's done that you just think, who is he really? But he was running his own company, and never once was he like, we got to tell everybody it's veteran owned, right? Yeah. You got to tell them that. That was never an issue with him. And like you said about pride and humility, I think some of it does come down to, if your ego's not in check, it's probably because you don't feel like you did what you were supposed to do while you were there.
Yeah. And this guy
certainly does.
The Instagram guys that are commenting, sticking it to the Instagram post with the Starbucks. Right. It's probably a lot of that. A lot of those guys probably either weren't in the military, maybe they got kicked out, had a bad experience. Who knows?
Corey. Yeah. It's Corey from Corey and Erica. That's all he does now. He just trolls Instagram posts. I support you, Black Rifle Coffee Company. Hire me. I need work.
Hey, that might be it.
Tired of swinging the hammer.
Yeah.
Probably right.
Anyway, okay. And again, I just want to reiterate something. I'm not really mad at those guys as much as I'm frustrated that I feel like we're on the same side, and they're predicating everything on misinformation, and it's a false premise, and I think we're better than that. That's all I'm saying. I think we're better than that. I hope they get it straight. I'm sure they're good people. All right. I want to talk about making watches. I think we'll have to come back to your phone, but I love this story. Let's just tell your phone story real fast.
Okay.
So I'm sitting in the office. What day was it? Do you remember? Friday of last week? Friday last week. Sitting in the office.
I don't remember.
Right?
I'm going to grab one of these beers.
You do what you need to do. And here, who said your phone was missing the first time? Well, it was you.
Yeah, I did.
So we're all out working, right, Harris? And Patrick's like, man, I set my phone down. I can't find it. And it turns into three of us basically on a search party team here looking for Patrick's phone.
At the store.
At the store, in the parking lot. We walk 500 yards over to the deli. And
I don't lose my phone, though. That's the thing.
We go get sandwiches as a habit.
That's why this is such a big deal.
Man, we're doing everything we can do to find this phone. Patrick, what happened after we came back?
We found it.
Oh, give us some details.
We need to back up for a second. So I noticed it was missing. I walked to lunch a few hundred yards away, not far.
Right.
Twin Peaks?
Beyond that. I walked out in the parking lot, came back in, and probably, 30 minutes later, I realized I didn't have my phone. So I'm trying to piece the story back together. So I went to my desk, I got on the computer and went to find my iPhone, logged in.
Great feature.
No, it's not, because it doesn't work. And that's where the story's going. So I go, all right, well, it's telling me right where it is, which is in the parking lot, in the middle of the parking lot, which I was actually standing right where it's telling me the phone was. So I go out there, I comb the parking lot, nothing. Can't find it anywhere. Okay, well, that's a little weird, but maybe it's giving me the general area, so that puts me close to inside the building. So I'm going to walk back through the building and see if I can find it. I use a little feature where it plays a sound so you can locate it, right? Don't hear it. Walk around. At this point, I get Chris and some other coworkers involved, and I call the place where I had lunch. I say, hey, did anybody find a phone? Nope, nothing here. So, okay, would you mind if I come back over? I'm just going to walk around because they're closing up shop. It's getting to be a little later in the day. So I go over there. They're all looking at me like I'm insane. I look up to find my iPhone again, and it's telling me that it's at the restaurant. Then all of a sudden, it moves. So it went from one side of the restaurant to the other, essentially. So, okay, that's pretty weird. But we're not seeing it. It's not where it says it is.
Yep.
So then we go back to work, all of us. I check it again, and it's moved again. It's back in the parking lot where it originally told me it was. So somebody goes, well, did you set it down in the bathroom or something? Well, I don't know, maybe. I've looked everywhere else at this point. Yeah. So as I'm walking towards the bathroom, I can hear down the hallway the little song that it plays.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I think I found it. So I thought the Find My iPhone feature was great, but it's not.
I just love the fact that the whole time it was in the can.
I think it literally, it's almost, because it was all the same places that I had just been, probably an hour and a half previous. So it's almost like it remembered the spots where I was.
Just retracing your steps.
But it kept switching between all of them. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm going to get Steve Jobs on the phone. We're going to figure this thing out.
Call him up.
Good luck.
Send him an email.
Too soon, Patrick. Too soon. You guys. All right. Harris is with us from H.Goose Watches. Give me your website.
It's hgoose.com.
Hgoose.com.
Instagram. We're on Instagram too, at H.Goose Watches.
You have a rockin' Instagram, by the way. Is that all you?
Absolutely.
All you?
It's a joint effort, me and a handful of other folks.
Yep.
Instagram's hard. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. So
why is that?
Getting all the pictures, getting the content, coming up with stuff to say, responding to people, staying on top of it. Powerful tool. It's really great. It gives people exposure to a diverse look at, what they can be if they buy an H.Goose watch. That's sort of the point. We're really honest about that.
Little lifestyle marketing there.
Yeah,
I think that's what Instagram is, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is where you display your brand as a lifestyle.
And everything on our Instagram is real. Everything that you see on there. I won't say that none of it's staged, because we'll certainly set up a picture, but every single one of those pictures, I can tell you what I was doing, who I was with, and it's either when I'm, shooting some guns, hunting, fishing, hanging out with friends, maybe out at a bar, at a work meeting or something. I just keep my camera with me and try to take good pics. So.
Yeah. What's the camera? Camera of choice there.
So I have my wife's old Nikon. I believe it's a D. I don't even know the number, but she's had it. She got it in 2009, so it's old. I was a Canon guy, and I ruined a really nice Canon DSLR back in 2012. I dropped it in the Saluda River on a long canoe trip, and then I lost its replacement. So
right on.
I'm hard on
Chris
electronics.
knows all about dropping cameras in bodies of water.
Let me tell you, man.
I tilted a kayak. My camera went bloop down to the
It's
bottom.
more fun to just light that money on fire.
Yeah, it hurt, man.
Yeah,
I was all right. I can feel your pain there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to say this: if you go to hgoose.com,
Yep, hgoose.com.
you have very generously given one person the chance to win their choice of a watch out of your catalog.
That's right.
Now, here's how this is going to work before we dive into what makes these watches great. First of all, aesthetically very, very pleasing. You brought a couple here for us to take a look at, and I feel like it's one of those things, maybe this is oversaid about products, but I would truly, if you play an instrument and you know the difference between you pick up a cheap guitar or, I don't know, Patrick, when it's a cheap drum set, I don't know how that works. Maybe the canvas is weird, whatever.
Just keep moving, Chris.
Right, okay. But you know how you can pick up a cheap instrument, you know it's a cheap instrument.
Cheap gun.
A cheap gun is a cheap gun, you know. High Point looks like a High Point for a reason. It's cheap to build. You pick up a good guitar, you know the difference. You pick up a good watch, you know the difference. I feel like this is something as soon as you put it in your hand, you can tell the difference. Like it feels like quality. It looks like quality. Some definite finer details that have been paid very good attention here. But here's the point. When you pick them up and you feel them in person, they look and feel just as good as they look online. Yeah. You can shop the entire catalog at hgoose.com, and Harris is going to give one watch away free of charge, your choice. But here's what you got to do to find it. You visit our new home on the web, feltrecoilshow.com, and you scroll down and you'll find the link to all of our videos. Click the videos, and you watch our latest upload about the Springfield Armory Saint, and somewhere in there is the code for the free watch. And the first person to find the code and use it gets the watch free of charge.
That's right, and I'll do one better than that. I'll even throw in a cool second band with it, too.
Look awesome. At that. Yeah, see? Right. So you'll go shop, make a choice, watch the video, get the code, and let's talk a little bit more about how H.Goose Watches came to be. Now, I've actually really been looking forward to this since you said you'd come join us, because I don't know a lot about what goes into a watch.
Yeah.
So can we start there and you tell me what makes a good watch a good watch?
Sure. So, I think the biggest thing is your sort of comfort with the watch. Above everything else, a watch that you wear every day or even once in a blue moon, it's got to be comfortable. It's got to feel good on your wrist. So I knew going into this, there was one thing in particular that I really wanted to do in building some watches. I wanted a smaller watch. I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'1", 170. I'm fairly skinny though. I don't have very big wrists, and I wanted a smaller watch, reminiscent of what my grandfather used to wear. Back in the 50s, men wore smaller watches. They just did. The biggest watch was maybe 35 millimeters across, 36 millimeters across, like a Rolex, an old Rolex. And those watches are really hard to find. There's a couple companies that still make them. Seiko still makes some little stuff. Rolex, through their sub-brand Tudor, still makes some stuff, but it's expensive. But I wanted a 35 millimeter watch, which is the one I'm wearing. It's a fairly small watch for wearability. And to me, that defines a good watch, is wearability. There's a number of other things that go into it. There's the movement. You can have a quartz movement, which is battery powered. You can have a solar movement like in a Casio. You can have an automatic mechanical movement like in a Rolex. Number of different ways to build a watch, but above all else, it's got to be really wearable.
Okay. How did you, what's the catalyst for literally wondering how the watch works?
Yeah. So, specifically, I'm not real sure, but I remember my first watch that I bought that wasn't just like a cheap sort of kid watch. Mm-hmm. I remember being in 8th grade and going to Alpine Ski Center on Augusta Road, which is no longer there. It's a CVS now. Yep. And I bought an old Freestyle brand dive watch with a metal link band and a bright red dial, and it was great, and I promptly lost it. But I've had a bunch of watches since then, but I also grew up, my old man, he's he restores cars. He restores motorcycles. He's a great woodworker.
He's everything I'll never be.
Yeah, well, no, and he's a lot of things I'll never be. I'm not that good at turning a wrench, but he sort of instilled in me a love for wear stuff out, buy something and really thrash it, really abuse it, and then see if you can rebuild it and thrash it again. And I think that's a really cool thing to do. I mean, that's fun to do with guns. That's fun to do with boats. That's fun to do with cars, watches, you name it. Just
Girlfriends.
I'm a married man. She's going to listen to this tomorrow. No, but it's a fun way to sort of approach things that you own is can I maintain it and really be in control of it? And so I think at some point I got curious and I had some old military issue Hamilton watches from the 70s and 80s and that didn't work. And I said, I'm going to make these work. And I did.
So what goes in? So I was reading like the About Us on your page. And first of all, kudos to you on Goose. Because Goose is your dog, right?
Goose is the man.
H is for Harris.
That's right.
Goose is for Goose.
That's right.
And you said, you described Goose, strong, smart, energetic, ultimate companion. And basically, you called him a constantly coiled spring. Is that what you said earlier?
Like a coiled spring, man. He's a 22-pound rat terrier, what I refer to as a middle Georgia mudfice. Mm-hmm. And he's just an all-around badass. I mean, he's everything you want in a little dog. He's super energetic. He's super smart. He'll cuddle up and lay down with you, and he'll rip a little mammal to pieces. He's awesome.
So from there, you go over to the quality and warranty section, and this is where a lot of my questions come from.
Sure.
I wish I understood what most of it meant. The heart of each watch is a 5-jewel gold-plated, all Swiss-made. Is it Ronda or Ronda?
It's Ronda.
Ronda Normtech quartz movement.
That's right.
So you said quartz movement means it's operated by a battery.
It's got a little battery in it.
As opposed to there are basically kinetic energy watches out there.
Yeah.
The movement powers the watch. What would I call that?
So you can have an automatic mechanical movement, or you can have a purely mechanical movement. A purely mechanical one you're going to wind every day.
Okay.
An automatic one has a little disc in the back that the movement of your wrist will turn it around, and that winds up the watch. You can have a solar-powered watch that's light activated.
With a calculator?
Yeah, well, the calculator watches are generally battery-powered.
Oh, okay.
It
sounds like a geeky calculator watch thing.
I've got one of those.
And it's powered by the sun.
Yeah. Well, I've got a calculator watch that I modified to fit on an OD green NATO strap when I was in the military, so...
Sorry about calling you a geek.
Super nerd.
Don't kill me.
But our movements, these Ronda movements, they're generally...
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, they're generally only found in higher-end watches. It's a really high-end quartz movement. They'll tell you on their website that the battery is... in these movements will last 3 to 5 years. I got 8 years out of one. I found one in a Victorinox watch. I got 8 years out of a battery, and then it 8 years before it indicated that it had a low battery, and now it's still running with the one tick every 5 seconds, which is how it lets you know it's a low battery. And it's still running, and that's been over a year later. So I'm getting 9 years out of that. So I said, okay, this is a great movement. I want to look into it. The true Swiss-made ones are gold-plated, and they have these little synthetic rubies that facilitate the friction reduction, basically. So you get less resistance, more accuracy, better battery life. Just a really, really high-quality, simple movement. And they're really, most watches that you'd find these types of movements in are going to be in the $500 to $1,000, $1,500 range. But it's the heart of the watch. It's the guts of the watch. That's the one thing you really, really don't want to skimp on.
So what's the alternative is my question. If I buy a $30 watch at Walmart that's constructed, I mean, there are people who will look at them and go, well, a watch is a watch. It's going to tell me the timer. It's not. And what fascinates me is you tell me there's rubies, there's gold plating, there's all that. So, okay, that's a higher quality, less friction, more accuracy, longer life, right? What's the alternative? How do people make subpar watches?
Sure, and I avoid using terms like subpar because I think...
Okay, I'll call them crap.
Well, I really believe a watch is a watch. If a watch, I mean, it's a tool. If it does what that tool is designed to do, if it tells you the time, tells you the time. But I believe in something that I refer to as the value proposition. And in the watch world, value proposition is this idea that you should get something more at a price point. So if you've got a bunch of watches that are $500 and they sort of functionally and aesthetically are here, they represent one thing. Well, if you can get that same functionality and that same aesthetic out of something that is $200, that's a value proposition. And to me, that means a lot. So some of these cheaper watches, less expensive watches, they're not going to have a gold-plated chassis on the movement. It's going to be a plastic chassis. It's going to be more susceptible to corrosion. It's going to be more susceptible to inaccuracy. The battery's not going to last as long. There may be a functional defect. They're going to be more prevalent. They're more throwaway. So they're made out of cheaper pieces and parts, and the tolerances aren't as tight. There's a lot of great stuff in the watch world coming out of China, in particular Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a absolute epicenter of the watch world. I mean, it's so cool. That and Switzerland, those are the two places, Hong Kong and Switzerland, and they both make great stuff. But the thing that the Swiss have gotten really good at is just really dialing in the quality control. It's like Michelin tires. You buy a set of Michelin LTXs, you're going to get 70,000 miles. You buy a Ronda Normtech movement powered watch, and you're probably not going to have to fool with a battery change for a long time.
So it's more efficient and higher quality, more durable, more efficient. It sounds similar to how we'll sell people guns, because they'll come in and go, well, why would I spend $600 on a Gen 4 Glock when I can get that Ruger LC9 for $375? And you say, that LC9 will most likely save your life when you need it to, but you'll be gun shopping again in less than 5 years. Yeah. Or you buy the Glock, you spend $600 now, and you know it's going to be there when you need it forever.
It's a great comparison.
Okay. So from there,
I taught him that, just to be clear.
Very, very much so.
He didn't know that.
Yeah, first time I came in, I just pounded them both on the counter and was like, guns.
Which end's the bullet come out?
Where's the bang switch?
I remember that day.
That was nice. A good time. So you get into all these nuances of the watch. When did you realize, was there a pivotal moment where you said, so I have to do this myself?
Yes and no. So I realized I was repairing watches, and I stumbled upon some jewelry and watch parts suppliers. And my dad kind of challenged me. He said, well, hey, figure it out, build your own, figure that out. That can't be that hard, right? And I said, okay, well, you probably not if I can get the parts. And that was a challenge, getting the parts. And I did that, and I think I built 44 watches completely by hand, sourcing parts and shipping parts to be modified and to have my dials printed. And the end result was a watch that I thought was pretty good. And I've got a bunch of buddies that I've made those watches for, and they like them a lot. But those watches are not in the same league as these watches. And I think a big thing that I realized was, yes, I needed to do this on my own, but I also needed to go to the right places to get my parts.
Right.
And I needed to rely on people that had been trained to put these things together. So I still do all the quality control, the final fit and finish and assembly, the fine tuning
of every watch,
of every single watch. Every single watch passes through my hand right now. Now that's going to change.
Impressive.
Yeah, I mean we're selling increasingly more and more watches. And it's going to be a bandwidth issue at some point. But right now, every watch goes through my hands. And if a watch has the slightest defect, it ain't leaving the shop. So yeah, it's a globalized effort to produce a great watch.
Is there a process you can share with us that doesn't give away trade secrets about what you're looking for when you do QC?
Yeah, so the slightest defect. I mean, if there's a tiny little scratch on the case, if I don't feel like the way that the stem, the part behind the crown where you set the time, if there's a little too much play or too much wobble, if I don't feel like a band, the stitching is aligned just right, I'm just not going to ship that to somebody, because I know that when I've ordered products like this, when I've ordered watches, I go over it with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, I look at it really closely, and if there's even the slightest, subtlest, almost imperceptible defect, I'm a little disappointed. I don't
Yeah.
want people to be disappointed.
See, we're the opposite in the gun store because we tend to go, it's a gun. I mean, what are you going to do with it when you get home? You're going to beat it up and use it. Why are you worried that there's a smudge right there?
And we're working towards that. I think we'll get to a point here pretty soon where, you know, our watches, I mean, they're damn near perfect now, you know, and I'm damn sure not going to ship one that's imperfect. But, you know, it's hard. A watch is a very intricate thing. You look at a Glock and you look at my watch, and you know, a Glock, those are big, chunky mechanical parts that come apart, and you can bang them around. And you can certainly bang these watches around, but when they're opened up, those tiny little parts are very delicate. Those tolerances are super tight.
So help me with this. I'm on LinkedIn today. Not job hunting, Patrick. Calm down. Yes, I was. And this article pops up from Business Insider, and we only got to go through the first 2 paragraphs, and you'll see where all my questions are. And you tell me, have you heard of this? Vacheron Constantin?
Vacheron Constantin.
Yeah, what you said.
Yeah.
Vacheron Constantin. All right. So the Swiss watch industry is weathering a crisis. Luxury brands are fighting for relevance. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the latest example is Swiss luxury watchmaker Vacheron Constantin is agreeing to sell a unique version of its Cornet de Vache. I don't speak surrender, so whatever this phrase is, through the watch enthusiast website Hodenki?
Yeah, great site. Just check it out. Really cool site.
No. You should go to hgoose.com.
Yeah,
Your business partner's going to murder you. So the watch was a limited run of 36 pieces and ran for $45,000.
Yeah.
Here's the kicker. Ready for this? $45,000. A bit cheaper than the standard version of the watch.
Yeah.
Due to its stainless steel case. Harris, who in the world is paying $45,000 for a watch, and why? Is this a status symbol?
You know, yeah, they absolutely are status symbol. It's the same people, you know, that are going to go buy a Bugatti or a Bentley or a high-end automobile. You know, those watches are cool. They're really intricate, high-end watches, and they're made out of precious metals and jewels. But, you know, and I'll say this. To me, it's, you know, what we used to joke around, I'll be a little crass here, but call it dick measuring.
Right.
You know, it's who's got the more valuable watch.
Ego.
Yeah, and a watch like that, you need an insurance policy. And I joke around and I tell some of my buddies that work in the banking industry and they're lawyers and they might wear a more expensive watch. I say, well, hey, don't you want a watch that you don't need an insurance policy for?
Right.
And they're neat stuff. They're a great brand. Rolex is a good example. People love luxury. I've got some nice watches, but you know, it's not really for me. And I can't fathom paying $45,000 for a watch.
Maybe there's a lot to be said about your perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be a guy out there that $45,000 to him is like
Lunch.
you know, $200 to us, right? Or lunch, yeah. But here's my question for you. So my dad always drove home the point when it came to vehicles: don't drive what you can't afford to fix.
That's right.
Right. So that always sticks in the back of my head. Even when I'm just daydreaming about cars, I go, man, one day I'll get that old, you know, Ford Taurus. And I think, I could never afford to fix that. And so the wagon, just so we're clear. So again, that means that the guy buying the $45,000 watch most likely can afford to fix it. But it's not to say there's not the guy like me who wants the LR3 of the worlds or the LR4 and will maybe stretch his budget to buy it. So my question is, what convinces the guys of the watch world to buy a $45,000 watch if it is stretching the budget? I mean, you say precious metals. Are we talking actual gold and diamonds and stuff like that inside the watch?
It's jewelry. At the end of the day, that's a piece of jewelry.
I mean, who would know though? Like, if I walk up and I look at your watch and I'm looking at the picture right now. I mean, it kind of looks like every other watch. It says graduated for 30 pulsations. If I knew what that was, I'd be so excited.
Yeah.
But it looks like every other watch.
So here's a good
You
analogy.
have to tell me it's a $45,000 watch.
Blazer rifles. You guys heard of Blazer rifles? The really high-end hunting rifles?
Right.
Familiar.
They're a really high-end brand, so it's the same thing. I mean, can you take your Savage 308 with your Nikon Pro Staff out and slay a beast?
I do it every weekend.
I do it every weekend too, you know?
Right.
You know, and I think for a lot of folks, it's like anything else. It's real estate, it's wine. In the luxury world, there are these groups of people, and they get together, and it's a passion, you know, and they discuss it, and it's a passion. And if you can afford it, and it's what you're into, great. You know, luxury watch sales have slipped in America, and I think that speaks a lot to our culture here. We certainly, you know, we have opulence.
Right. Lead Swingers whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
Spending all our money on that high-end stuff right there.
But I also think there's this sort of, you know, and we're a little more low key as a culture in America in terms of luxury goods, you know, and certainly there is a big portion of American culture that will go buy an, you know, $80,000 or $90,000 car.
Oh yeah,
you know, $45,000 watch. But I think more times than not, you see the folks that are wearing the classic, you know, H.Goose type field watch because they appreciate that value proposition.
Let's just say you had the money to spend on a watch like that. How often are you going to wear it?
That's a good question.
I'm thinking probably not.
Every
Not a
time
whole
I
lot.
take your mom to dinner.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know, I think, and I've got a good friend who's got a nice Rolex that he bought brand new in the early 90s, and he wore it just about every day. And he brought up a good point to me. He said, you know what, Rolex is basically currency, and this is a guy who travels the world a lot. And he said, I know that no matter where I am, no matter what happens to me, if that Rolex is on my wrist, I can get a plane ticket home. You know, and that's a good point. And Rolex has achieved that icon status. You know, but you can also get held up at gunpoint over a Rolex because people know what they are. So, you know, a watch like that, people aren't going to recognize the Vacheron Constantin. People probably aren't going to recognize as quickly. Now, if it were me, and I can't overemphasize the fact that I would not buy a watch that costs that much money. But if I did, I'd absolutely wear it every day. I'd swim in it. I'd get in Lake Hartwell in it. I'd ride KTM dirt bikes in it. I'd shoot deer in it. I'd clean deer in it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you said about the lessons your dad taught you. It sounds like that's kind of in your personality.
Use it up, wear it out. Make do or do without.
So there's a guitar company, full disclosure, I just had to remember their name online, Rockbridge Guitars, that custom makes guitars. Base price is $5,100 if you want one of their guitars. And by the way, it's going to take 2 years. So you're not getting it anytime soon. You're going to pay $5,100 and then you're going to wait because they make them by hand. But to me, that's like a tangible, if somebody, again, this is what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Somebody walked in and said, hey, let me, you know, I got a Martin in the corner over there. Let me pluck at your Martin. Well, that sounds pretty good. And I go, yeah, but this is the Rockbridge. Well, they're going to pick that up and there's an actual difference. There's a quality of sound. There's everything you need there. And they're going to go, whoa, that's so much nicer. I don't know how you get there with certain things. I guess maybe that watch is one of them. But,
you know, it's funny because people will scoff at a Wilson Combat 1911 because it costs $3,700.
right.
How would anybody ever pay that? Well, I mean,
That's a good example, though.
there is a difference between that and the $600 whatever brand X 1911 that's slapped together by some guy that doesn't really know what he's doing versus that one that's been through a pistol smith's hands and has really been worked over bit by bit and refined. But you can feel that quality is tangible and it translates into, for the gun, typically results of how it shoots.
Yeah.
So there's more. It's almost like I look at that watch and I go, that's for somebody they've got the Bugatti, they've got all the millions of dollars of real estate. They're bored and they just got too much money and they got like, hey man, you know.
Now I don't want to denigrate Swiss watchmaking at all because
we'll do it for you.
Well, and I'll make fun of people that buy those watches, but there is an art to that. I mean, these guys that are making stuff like that, they're hand carving precious metal at a microscopic level and putting these things together. And the same thing with the Wilson Comet. The tolerances on that watch are going to be a lot tighter than the tolerances on, say, a Seiko. Just like the tolerances on a high-end 1911 are going to be a lot tighter than on like a Rock Island 1911. So it's different strokes for different folks. I try to shy away from people that are into expensive watches, and I have a lot of friends that are into expensive watches. And it's definitely a status thing, whether they'll admit it or not. But I try to shy away from sort of giving them a hard time about it, because if that's what floats your boat, that's what floats. Life's too short not to let your boat float.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's one of those things that I mean, I don't want to come across as like making fun of people that buy them. Yeah. But it is definitely one of those things I can't wrap my brain around. Yeah, because I look at it and I go, I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, you're gonna hunt with it on. You're gonna beat it up a little bit. It's got to be able to stand it. So, and you want a nice, good quality something, but it's hard for me to fathom. You know
how many 1990s Toyota Tacomas you can buy with $45,000?
45,000 of them? I'm gonna guess.
Nah, they hold their value pretty good.
Oh yeah,
but you can probably get 5 or 6 really nice ones.
Yeah, okay. You said 95 Tacoma, right?
Yeah.
Did I miss? Okay. Not 45,000, really? Okay. All right. So hgoose.com is the website, hgoose.com. And again, if you go to feltrecoilshow.com, you can find our latest uploaded video about the Springfield Armory Saint, and there's a code hidden in that video that'll get you a free watch, but you got to be the first one to find the code and go redeem it ASAP. Our time here is up, so we'll say one thing. Patrick, good luck tomorrow.
Thanks, buddy.
Patty's having a little thing done. You're getting, is it a chin tuck you're doing? Yep. Or did you go for the full facelift? Yep. I couldn't remember. Okay. And then next week, this is going to be really, really cool. We may have a delayed release of next week's episode. You'll probably get a Wednesday night Chris rambling, because there's quite a few things on my list here that we're just not going to worry about tonight. But you'll probably get that. But then I'll remind you of something very, very cool that's happening next week. We've been invited by the Thomas Creek Brewery to go tour the facility. They're going to let us videotape it, and then they're all going to sit down with us for a special podcast next Thursday night.
Right on.
I'm ready to get drunk.
You can do that.
Great guys.
I'll do the show. Yeah, man. Actually, you ever get in those situations where you don't want to be like the one-upper in the room, especially with the people that are with whatever said company it is, But they were very kind, and they said, you got to come. You got to hang out. We'll do this thing. And you try and say, okay, but we're going to videotape everything. And they're like, great. Okay, but then we're going to record it too. Yeah, no problem. Okay, yeah, great. Audio record. So I volunteered a couple years ago. REI had a See You on the River event where we went and cleaned up the Reedy River. That could take 100 years, by the way.
Yeah, you failed.
Yeah, we didn't.
So
we didn't do so great. Well, what's interesting? Who would have known, and I mean this sincerely, I don't know how all those tires get in the river.
Oh, God.
But they are there. Wait, like, where does this come from? Like, who's the dude that's like, well, I'm got to make another trip and dump these tires in the river?
And speaking of rivers, one thing I forgot to mention, our watches, the model watch is called the Saluda, and it's named after the Saluda River. And we are big proponents of cleaning up that river and the Reedy River. I think our rivers here in the upstate are tremendously underappreciated. They're starting to be more appreciated, but they're a huge, huge part of our ecosystem.
Okay, quick diversion here. But I saw you post recently on Instagram that you were fishing on the Saluda.
Yeah.
Are you doing that on like the 123 end of the Saluda out near Easley?
No, so that was up in the north part of the county, up in Marietta.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
I've got a friend that's got a little piece of property up there. Yep. And we go up there, and there's some good shoals. Going up there and doing some bass fishing, just beautiful, beautiful.
I hear you.
I've actually been from Marietta all the way to Columbia in a canoe. It took a number of days, but I mean, just an unbelievably beautiful watershed. I think one of the defining geographical characteristics of our state, and massively underappreciated, just like the Reedy.
Yeah.
The Reedy runs through downtown, so it gets a little more press. But
it's pretty
gorgeous.
The Reedy is pretty dirty.
It is.
So all that links me back to saying we did an event with them, and just spent a Saturday cleaning up. But in exchange, Thomas Creek opened the brewery afterwards and had like a bluegrass festival, but only for the volunteers. So you got to go and hang out and see everything. It was one of those things where I was like the creepy guy all by himself. Like Carmen went with me, but we didn't know anybody. So we just kind of showed up and walked around, and it was nice. Didn't really spend a lot of time there, though. So I'm really looking forward to going back, because when he's like, oh, yeah, I get to see all this, I'm going to be like, yeah, I got to see it. But nobody, it wasn't a day for them to give tours. It was just a day for them to be open to the volunteers.
You're probably still going to look like the creepy guy, though.
Always
being
do.
honest.
Yeah, I can pull that off pretty easily. So anyway, look forward to that next week, because we certainly are. And again, Harris can't say thanks enough for hanging out with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Please visit hgoose.com. We'll link to him through our Facebook page.
Hit us up on Instagram too at H.Goose Watches. A lot of cool stuff.
Real active on Instagram.
real active.
I like it. Probably my favorite social media platform.
By far, yeah.
Everything else sucks compared to Instagram, quite honestly. All right, that wraps it for episode 12. We'll see you next time. Please don't forget, the charity of choice this week is Operation Underground Railroad. You want to visit them and make a donation. And remember, 522 people arrested on Super Bowl weekend and 30 traffickers nabbed on Super Bowl weekend. Where was the Super Bowl this year? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Houston.
Was it Houston? In Texas. This isn't a third world country. This is Texas. And they're grabbing 30 people who are trafficking children around our country for these guys. So visit them. If you're inclined to make a donation, we would appreciate it. And we will see you next week for episode number 13 at the Thomas Creek Brewery.